is tackling is huge right now in California. If you drove around any of the kind of ranch land last winter, terribly parched, and they do have to buy these patches of alfalfa, and it's price prohibitive for these guys, so huge problem. Alvaro.
My name is Alvaro Ramirez. I'm with eHarvest, and thankful to be here and share with you what we're doing and why we're excited about working with small farmers. So as you know, we're going to have more people in this world. And the neat thing about it is that there's so many technologies being created to help farmers increase their yield, increase their profits, and hopefully we'll have enough food to feed that growing population. So I'm interested in what Justin's going to talk about because we do waste a lot of food. In some of the farmers that we work with, we can see that at their farm, and they're trying to figure out what to do with it. Or even some of the retailers that we talk to, where they waste food and they just don't know how the product is shrinking and why it's happening. But with that, with all that great technology that's being created, the one thing that we've noticed is that there's just the one part that is not being fixed, and that is the supply chain. It's old, it's cluttered with multiple layers of middlemen, and to the point where from the farm to the store, that product will zigzag 7 to 10 times before it makes it into the store. And so with that, what we also noticed was that, did I turn it off?
Yeah, just press it again.
That small farmers will lose up to 33% of their profits because they sell to middlemen rather than directly to retailers. So even with all the great technology that you can bring to their farms to help them increase their profit, that profit is going to go to somebody else. One of the farmers that we talked to told us that his dad had told him, if you want to make money in the produce industry, never ever be the farmer, always be the middleman. But he just had a passion for being a farmer, and that's what he did. And so what we wanted to do is kind of fix that. And that started with the story of a farmer that we met down in Salinas. And I'm going to call him Rick because he asked us never to share his name because the industry is so small, everybody knows each other. But Rick had told us a couple of years ago that he had almost lost his crop because he didn't have a buyer lined up. And so I said, well, how do you not have a buyer knowing that you have product coming? And he said it's very common in our industry when you're small. And so in his case, one of the giant berry growers in the area, you can imagine who, came and said, hey, I'll buy your strawberries for $8 a box. And to avoid the total loss, he could have just not harvest and let the insurance cover his expenses, but just to make a little bit of profit, it was still a loss to him, he sold it for $8. The large berry grower repackaged it, rebranded, and sold it on the market for $20 a box. And all because Rick didn't have volume, didn't have a way to market or move that product to connect directly with retailers. And so we sat there and thought, we could actually fix that. Technology can make that difference. In 2011, Sarah did a study that found that small farmers, more now than ever, are looking for ways to aggregate volume so they can reach retailers directly. And so when we looked at that, we went inside and talked to about 120 farmers in California, kind of tried to figure out, is this a repetitive problem? And we found out that it was. We were just last week in Hawaii at the Asia Pacific Resilient Summit, where that problem is exactly the same thing in Asia, it's the same thing in Hawaii. We talked to the Minister of Barbados, and that problem repeats itself. We talked to farmers in Latin America, and they all face exactly the same problem. So supply chain has to be fixed. And so we created eHarvestHub, which is a platform that provides farmers an easy way to connect directly with retailers and truckers. In other ways, we take a lot of the middlemen out of the deal. So we get a lot of unhappy people with what we're doing.
Like Mitsubishi.
But anyway, our goal was to give farmers a platform where they can list their fresh produce. We aggregate the volume across multiple small farmers so retailers can shop from various farmers and still meet their demand. Now, retailers will tell you that they don't go to a small farmer for that very reason. The volume is just not there. They can buy 1 week, but then in the next week they have to go figure out where to go source product. And that's why the middlemen exist, because they take care of aggregating product. Right? But if the retailer had a way to do it, they'll buy directly from a farmer. We found out that we can actually save the retailer about 15% going straight to a farmer. The shelf life of the product is increased because it comes straight from the farm to the retailer. But another thing that happens in produce is that prices are negotiated every day. It fluctuates just like interest rates do. So this, they have to negotiate all day long. So we allow them to be able to chat. So if you're a buyer at a Safeway, you can chat with your farmer while the farmer is out in the field. This is very important for a small farmer because it's a family-owned business and he has to go take care of his field while he takes care of business. And a lot of the times they'll lose orders because they can't reply to the buyer on time. So the buyer just moves on. So this allows them to be able to communicate. And another thing that we find out with farmers is, and at least in the produce industry, relationships are a big thing. And so a lot of the farmers say, sometimes I want to talk to my buyer just to find out how they're doing. So we wanted to give them that chat window where they can have that conversation. We're going to build an algorithm into it so that it picks up all the data that has to do with the order. So as they talk, the order is built. And they can continue their conversation and buying product and selling it. But then we wanted to also allow the farmer to lower the shipping costs by scheduling delivery of their product directly with truckers. So this is kind of like Uber. What Uber does for their passengers and drivers, we do it for farmers and truckers. Now, the produce industry is about $184 billion worldwide. The U.S. alone does about $83 billion. And of that, 60% is done by mid to small farmers. And they generate over 421 million transactions a year. That for us can create potentially about $43 billion in revenue. USDA says there's about 2 million small farmers in the U.S. But that accounts somebody who does $1,000 in revenue and maybe has 2 avocado trees in the backyard. We looked at farmers that do $25,000 in revenue or more. We still want to pay attention to the smaller farmer that does $20,000, because $20,000 for a family is a lot of money. So we want to take care of them. But target market, it's about 32,000 farmers in the U.S., of which 40% alone are in California. So obviously we're going to focus in California first. But the interesting thing about this is that we've been able to, we're talking to the government of Barbados. We have a farmer in Latin America that signed up to use our service because he ships product this way, and he needed some of our technology. So it's an on-demand platform, basically, that allows the farmer to just easily connect. When we decided to take our product to market, making sure that what we do for the farmer helps increase our profit all along. Traceability became a big part of our conversation with farmers, and some of our farmers knew. They would say traceability and FDA, and that's all they knew. They knew that the law was coming down, that they had to use technology to trace product for recall purposes, but the technology available was too expensive. I'll give you an example. One of the first farmers that signed up with us, we had to charge him $1,200 for our traceability software, which is, it's nothing. And he smiled because the day before, one of our competitors was there offering exactly the same thing for $100,000. And he had to say no to them because he couldn't afford it. So obviously when we said $1,200, he just took his checkbook out and wrote a check. But we offer that as a free tool for farmers, because we're thinking of that smaller farmer under $25,000 that can't afford the technology, but we want to make sure that if traceability is to do what it's supposed to, which is protect consumers from bacterial contamination in food and minimize the financial impact to farmer, it has to be available to everybody, not just the one that can pay. When we talked to Whole Foods was concerned that the smaller farmer that they deal with they would no longer purchase from them because of this issue, right? They're under the radar, they don't have to follow the law, the new food safety rules, but they would not be able to purchase them because it's a liability for them. So we get this traceability software that basically allows them to track the product. The neat thing about our label is that each label is unique, so we can trace it through the supply chain. Middleman right now does not want to take ownership of the product when there's a problem. When there's money involved, they want the money, but they don't want the responsibility. So this label actually allows us to be able to, allows the farmer to say who actually moved that product. Getting boots on the ground is very important for us because farmers, like I said, it's a relationship. It's neat when I go visit a farmer, you feel like you're walking into grandma's house. They're very welcoming people, and they share everything with you. But again, we give this away for free for that very reason. We want to make sure everybody has it. But for us, it actually builds the trust with farmers. But it collects a lot of data for us, all the farmer information, all their buy information, and the trucker information that we use later on. And it lowers our cost of acquisition. I want to share about Mi Pueblo. I don't know if you heard of Mi Pueblo. Mi Pueblo it's a small grocery store chain here in the Bay Area. They cater to the Latino community. And traceability is becoming a big issue for them because they bring product from Latin America that their customers are used to seeing. They don't find it a safe way. But Mi Pueblo, that's about 12,000 orders a year and a purchasing power of $40 million in produce. And they like to work directly with small farmers from Latin America. So we're in the middle of signing up a contract with them. But this is kind of who is in our space. There's a lot of people that cater to the farmer, a lot that cater to the retailer, and truckers. In the trucker space, you have a lot of brokers. And on the retailer side, our biggest competitor will probably be like an iTrade, who has an order management system, allows the buyer and the seller to connect with each other, but he charges licensing fees and percentages off the volume of the orders. And that is not something we want. Our motto is to keep the profits with the farmer. But this is what a typical small farmer does. They generate about 3,600 transactions. We charge them a flat fee of $3 per transaction. And that for us is about $10,000 in profit. It's not a lot. I can't pay my IT guys for that, with that. But when we add transportation to that, that's about a $100 flat fee per delivery that a trucker makes. And it generates over $350,000 for us, that one farmer. So if you look at about 30 farmers, which is what we're working towards getting in the next 12 months, that can generate about $2.7 million with a 25% adoption rate. When the farmers fully adopt the software, that's about 11,000. And I look at our software more like an eBay and an Uber mixed together, and that's basically what it does. Right? This is my team. When I set out to do this with farmers, I realized it wasn't a farmer problem. It was a logistics issue. So, Jose and I got together and we put a team together. The guys that built the supply chain system for Walmart.com. Very efficient system, and our guys know supply chain inside out. And we do have guys in the produce business that understand it, from the buyer and the seller, the farmer and the retailer. I always talk about Brett because he is a produce guru. I mean, you talk to Brett about produce, he almost cries about it. He just loves the industry that much. And the other part of it for us that's really important is the UX and the UI. It has to be a very simple software to be used. To the point that when we show it to a farmer and their employees, it actually takes them 5 minutes to learn how to use it. And they can be up and running that same day. The very first time we showed it to a supervisor at a package shed, he turned around and showed 2 of his employees, and they were labeling their boxes that day. And it took me 5 minutes to learn how to use it. So it's very intuitive, very simple. Now to give you an idea of this, then we have our advisors. Obviously in the produce industry, on the technical side, and the business strategies. But when we were in Hawaii, one of the neat things that we would see was that we looked at the Asian market. We're actually talking to one of the farmers that it's being asked to send product to Japan because Japan takes a lot of product from China, and they're having issues with food safety. They're concerned with it. It's a big concern, so they want to come out this way. But the food safety remains there. And farmers in Hawaii still don't have technology to be able to trace product because they're very small farmers. I think the largest farmer in Hawaii has 4,000 acres, and to us that's a small farmer. A mid-sized farmer for us is somebody who has 10,000 acres. But everything is still a manual process for them, and food safety is becoming more important for everybody. Transportation is a big thing, and moving product into Japan. We met a couple a few months ago that they were trying to figure out how to get product into Japan, because now you got to move it from the mainland, to another country, and that just takes too long to do it. So they're trying to figure out how long can the refrigeration hold the product before it gets there and keeps the shelf life for the product and still make it not as expensive. The neat thing about our software is that it can allow a farmer locally to be able to understand what the market is doing, so they know when to grow product. So we'll be able to say, if we have buyers searching for a particular, say tomatoes this time of the year, then it may allow those farmers to move their crops around to meet the demand versus just growing the same thing. Barbados and Hawaii has the same problem. Everybody grows the same product, so they flood the market. and it becomes really cheap. And when nobody has it, it becomes really expensive, and they have to bring it from outside. Where, at that point, that farmer can't compete. So it allows them to be able to move their crop and do it in a very inexpensive way. The other part about this is that you are able to give a farmer data that allows them to understand how product is sold. So we had a farmer one time that said, I don't understand why my product is not selling. And so if you need to be able to tell them, this is what you compare to the market, what everybody else is doing in the market without disclosing anybody's information, but you can see what pricing is doing. Some of the farmers that we were talking to, it was funny because they said, we'll sit down in the morning at 6 o'clock and have breakfast, and we'll say, how much are you going to sell your product for? They fix prices. I come from a mortgage banking background. You just don't fix prices, right? Buyers do the same thing. How much are you going to pay for a product? And they call each other to make sure that the market stays stable. But that's because there's no systems that allows them to know how to price product. And that's something that our software can do for farmers. Do it very, very easily, very efficient, and not costly. When we signed up our first farmer with just the traceability piece of our software, an organic farmer, they sold product to Whole Foods. Whole Foods is kind of unique because each store can buy on their own, unlike a Safeway. But then they also have a distribution center. But each store has to approve you as a vendor. And they were trying to do business with Whole Foods headquarters in Texas. And they were not able to do it because they couldn't trace product. And so when we signed them up, the day they were up and running, they called Whole Foods, and Whole Foods gave them a brand new account. So automatically that value was high for them because they were making a lot of money. But here's another example. When it comes to traceability, food safety, one of our farmers was asked by his buyer to do a mock recall. They had never done one. And when we showed up, they were like, can you just do it in your system? And then gave us, I'm like, no, you have to put real data in the system. It took him 3 people, 10 hours a day for 4 days to come up with one scenario. Typically on traceability scenarios, you run 4 different scenarios to kind of understand how you can get to that information faster. With the software, they can do that in minutes. When there is a contamination in the marketplace, they can pull product a lot faster and make it make it a smaller recall than just putting all your product in quarantine. When we visited one of our advisors, Garrett, at his farm, they do a cantaloupe. They do about 2 million cases of cantaloupe a year. Most of their stuff gets shipped to the East Coast. And the day we showed up, they were going through a fire drill because one of their vendors said, hey, it's a recall cantaloupe. And we don't know if it's yours or anybody else. They couldn't tell who it was because the FDA was not releasing the name. The FDA was 48 days into the case, and they could not figure out whose product was contaminated. So at that point, the whole cantaloupe industry just died. Nobody was moving product. They had to sit there and wait. So systems like this allow them to go a lot faster. Allows the FDA to make the recall a lot faster, less panicking to the public. Because when you hit a recall, you just don't buy the product. It doesn't matter who grew it. You just don't want to buy it. So anyway, that's pretty much what we do.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alvaro. I wanted to make another grand entrance. So the traceability issue is huge. We had just another anecdote to build off that cantaloupe example. But we were down visiting Taylor Farms, which some of you might know in Salinas Valley. They do several million pounds of lettuce, spinach, leafy greens every week. And back before traceability was kind of a thing, there was a spinach recall at a random farm somewhere, and had nothing to do with Taylor Farms, but because they didn't have that traceability solution and they couldn't prove where their crop was from, their entire spinach vertical went to 0 in sales for 4 months. And spinach accounts for about, I think at that time it was about 30% of all their sales. So millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of savings with traceability solutions.